The twin suns of Arian 4 set low on the horizon, painting the sky in deep orange and violet shades. The frontier colony was quiet, but beneath the silence lay a rhythm of hard labor and unspoken tension. Wind carried the smell of dust and metal, drifting across unfinished structures and worn machinery. Humanity had carved a home here, though it still felt fragile, as if the wild planet could swallow them at any moment. Captain Elias Rourke stood on the colony's eastern ridge, a tall man with tired eyes. His uniform had long been replaced with workers' clothes, patched and dirty, but he still carried himself like a soldier. He had fought in the Earth-Krell War years ago and had come here afterward, searching for peace. Yet even here, on this remote edge of human space, conflict seemed to whisper on the wind. From his vantage point, Elias could see the lights of the colony flickering against the growing night. About 200 settlers lived there, farmers, engineers, families with children who played in dusty yards. They struggled each day to survive. The soil was hard and the weather unpredictable, but the settlers were stubborn. That was the nature of humanity, never yielding even when logic said survival was impossible. Elias turned as he heard footsteps. A young technician, Mira, ran up the ridge, her face pale with worry. She held a handheld scanner, its display flashing with a pulsing red mark. "Captain Rourke," she said, still using his old title out of habit. "We've picked up something strange. Energy readings on the edge of Sector 9. Elias frowned. "Another malfunction?" Mira shook her head. "Not this time. It's strong, consistent, too organized for natural activity. It almost looks like a ship signature." Elias narrowed his eyes, scanning the dark horizon. Sector 9 lay beyond the far hills, a rocky stretch rarely patrolled. If it was a ship, then it had come down hard because nothing had registered entering orbit. His instincts stirred, the old soldier in him whispering warnings. "Get a small team together," Elias ordered. "No broadcast, no panic. If this is trouble, we handle it quietly." By nightfall, Elias and 3 settlers rode ground vehicles out toward the signal. The wind howled, pushing dust across their path. The vehicle's headlights cut beams through the gloom, bouncing against rocks and twisted trees. None of them spoke much. Out here, the land felt empty and silence carried weight. After nearly an hour, the signal grew stronger. Then they saw it, a faint glow rising behind a ridge. Elias halted the lead vehicle and motioned for the others to stay quiet. They climbed the rocks, weapons ready, and looked down. There in the hollow of the land lay the remains of a craft. Sleek metal twisted against the ground, smoke rising from ruptured panels. Sparks hissed and strange glyphs glowed faintly across its hull. The design was nothing human. It was alien. Elias felt his heart tighten. Encounters with alien technology rarely meant safety. He raised a hand to signal caution, but then he saw movement. A figure was pulling itself from the wreckage, struggling to stand. The figure was tall and slender, humanoid in form, but with features too sharp, too precise to be human. Long silver hair fell around her shoulders, and her eyes shone faintly like twin shards of light. She wore a torn suit of strange material, patterned with luminous veins. Blood, dark and unfamiliar, marked her arm. The settlers behind Elias shifted nervously. One whispered, "Should we?" "Shoot," Elias shook his head. He stepped forward slowly, lowering his weapon but keeping his guard. The alien woman looked at him, her expression wary yet calm. Then, to his surprise, she spoke. "Help me," she said in clear, though accented English. Her voice was soft but carried strength. "Please." They brought her back to the colony under strict silence. Only a few trusted settlers knew what had happened. In the infirmary, under dim lights, the alien woman lay on a cot while Mira worked to treat her wounds. Elias stayed near, watching. He wanted answers, but he also felt something else, a strange pull he could not explain. After some time, the woman stirred. Her eyes opened and she studied the room. Elias leaned closer. "You can understand me?" She nodded weakly. "Your language is simple. I have learned." "Enough. Who are you?" Elias asked. Her gaze held his. "My name is Serenia. I am not of this world nor of your kind. My people, the Varith Dominion, they are hunters, rulers. They do not forgive betrayal." Her voice trembled slightly, the first crack in her calm. "I escaped them. They will follow." Elias exchanged a look with Mira. The word Dominion carried weight. Rumors had spread of a powerful empire beyond the edges of charted space, but humans had yet to encounter them directly. If this was true, their colony could be in grave danger. Serenia pushed herself up despite her injury. You must understand. The Dominion sees you as nothing. Small, primitive. They would not care for your world until now. I came here, and in doing so, I brought their eyes to you. Elias's jaw tightened. Why here? Why us? Her eyes softened. Because I saw what your kind can be. Unpredictable, stubborn. Alive in ways the Dominion does not understand. I chose to leave them, and I chose to come to you. She hesitated, then whispered words that made the room fall silent. Tonight I belong to you. Mira frowned, confused. Elias felt the weight of the words differently. This was no romantic vow, it was a declaration of loyalty, of desperation. Serenia was offering herself not as a captive, but as an ally. Over the next 2 days, Serenia regained strength. She walked the colony, studying the people. Children stared at her with wide eyes, while adults watched with suspicion. She spoke little, but when she did, her words carried a strange wisdom. She asked questions about farming, about machines, about why humans sang while they worked. Everything seemed to surprise her. Elias remained cautious but also curious. At night he sat with her by the generator field where the stars shone bright above. You spoke of the Dominion, he said. Tell me the truth. What are we facing? Serenia's expression darkened. The Varith Dominion controls hundreds of systems. Their fleets are vast, their soldiers bred for war. They see other species only as tools or resources. Obedience is demanded. Resistance is erased. And you? Elias asked. Why betray them? She looked at him, her eyes reflecting starlight. Because I saw what they had forgotten. Choice. Freedom. I was a weapon to them, trained to obey. But I learned to question. I learned to dream. When I found whispers of your kind, I believed perhaps humans could be different. She paused, her voice almost breaking. If the Dominion finds me here, they will destroy everything to make a lesson. They will come. Elias stared out at the sky. He had fought wars before, seen death. The colony was not ready for this kind of enemy. But retreat was not an option. They had nowhere else to go. Humanity did not run. They endured. On the third night after Serenia's arrival, the colony's long-range scanners picked up something. A faint signal at first, then clearer. Energy spikes in orbit, patterns too deliberate to be natural. The settlers gathered in the command hub, anxiety heavy in the air. Mira turned to Elias, her face pale. It's them. Ships, they found her. Serenia stood at the edge of the room, her expression grim but unsurprised. The Dominion wastes no time. They will test you, then crush you. Elias looked around at his people, farmers, engineers, families. They were not soldiers, yet he saw determination in their eyes. They had survived storms, famine, and endless struggle on this harsh world. Now something greater threatened them, and still none looked ready to surrender. Elias took a deep breath. Then we make them bleed for every step they take. We are human. We don't break easily. Serenia's eyes lingered on him. For the first time, her guarded expression softened into something like hope. She nodded. Then perhaps, together we stand a chance. Outside, the night sky flickered with faint lights, shadows of ships moving among the stars. The Dominion was coming, and the fragile colony of Arian 4 would be the battlefield. The colony of Arian 4 was not built for war. Its buildings were simple, its weapons outdated, and its people were settlers, not soldiers. Yet as the days passed after Serenia's warning, a new energy settled over the dusty settlement. The people worked longer hours, spoke in hushed tones, and looked at the skies with wary eyes. Everyone knew something was coming. Elias Rourke walked the perimeter wall one morning, his boots crunching against loose stone. He scanned the horizon where the suns were rising, bathing the barren land in pale light. The wall itself was little more than a ring of metal sheets welded together, strong enough to keep out wild beasts but nothing against an army. Still, it was a line, and humans had always fought best when defending a line. He stopped as Serenia joined him. She moved quietly, her silver hair catching the light. Though her wounds had healed, she still carried herself like someone with invisible scars. Her eyes studied the wall and the settlers working below. They are afraid, she said softly. They should be, Elias replied. We're about to face an empire that's crushed dozens of worlds. These people have only ever fought dust storms and hunger. Serenia tilted her head. And yet, they do not give up. Fear is heavy, but I see something else in them. Defiance. Elias gave a short laugh. That's humanity in a word. We don't know when to stop. Serenia turned toward him, her gaze thoughtful. Then perhaps we can use that. Dominion forces are powerful but predictable. They believe in perfection, in strict order. They cannot imagine chaos as a weapon. What do you mean? Elias asked. I can teach you ways to fight them. Not with greater weapons, but with what you already have. Your unpredictability. Your instincts. The Dominion cannot calculate what it does not understand. Elias considered her words. She was right about one thing. They had no fleet, no heavy artillery. Their only advantage was being human. All right, he said at last. Show us. Training began that very day. Serenia gathered small groups of settlers in the open fields beyond the colony, demonstrating tactics they had never considered. She taught them how to move in irregular patterns to confuse scanners, how to create decoys using heat sources and mirrors, and how to turn simple tools into traps. Old farming drones became remote bombs. Mining carts were set on hidden rails to launch at intruders. Even cooking fuel could be turned into fire traps if used correctly. At first, the settlers struggled. Many had never held a weapon, and some shook with nerves during drills. But Serenia was patient, guiding them with calm precision. She showed them how the Dominion soldiers thought. Straight lines, perfect formations, predictable strategies. And then she showed them how to break those patterns with surprise and stubborn resistance. Elias watched from the side, impressed. Serenia moved with the grace of someone trained for war, yet she encouraged the settlers gently like a teacher. Even the children noticed, gathering at the edges to watch their parents practice with strange determination. One evening, after hours of drills, Elias found Serenia sitting alone near the generator fields. She was staring up at the sky, where faint stars were beginning to appear. You've given them hope, Elias said, sitting beside her. Her eyes remained on the stars. Hope is dangerous. It burns bright but can be crushed easily. Maybe, Elias replied. But sometimes it's all we have, and it makes us fight harder. Serenia glanced at him, her expression unreadable. You speak like someone who has fought too many times. I have, Elias admitted. And I've seen hope pull men back from the edge when nothing else could. Don't underestimate it. For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then Serenia's voice softened. Perhaps you are right. When I was with the Dominion, I was taught that hope is weakness. But here, it feels like strength. Days turned into a week. The colony transformed. Where once people complained about broken machines or poor harvests, now they worked together with urgency. The old irrigation pipes were repurposed into tunnels. Watchtowers rose from scrap metal. Every settler had a role, even the children who carried messages or gathered supplies. Mira, the young technician, became Serenia's closest helper. Together they built signal jammers from spare parts, devices meant to confuse Dominion scanners. Elias often found the two of them surrounded by wires and glowing panels, their faces lit by sparks of invention. But as preparation grew, so did tension. Some settlers whispered fearfully at night. Others wondered aloud if Serenia had brought doom upon them, if perhaps handing her over would spare them. Elias shut those talks down quickly, but he knew the fear was real. One evening, during a heated meeting, an older farmer named Harlan stood and pointed at Serenia. Why should we trust her? For all we know, she's leading the enemy right to us. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. Serenia remained calm, her expression unreadable. Elias stood, his voice steady but sharp. You think handing her over will save us? The Dominion doesn't work that way. If they come, they'll kill us all just to make a point. Serenia didn't bring death here, it was coming eventually. At least now we have a chance to fight back. His words carried weight and silence settled again. Harlan sat, still frowning, but no one argued further. Serenia met Elias's eyes afterward, a flicker of gratitude in her gaze. The next morning the sky changed. At first it was only a shadow across the suns, a faint glimmer too high to be natural. But soon the scanners confirmed it. A massive vessel was moving into orbit above Arian 4. The settlers gathered outside, staring upward as a dark shape spread across the heavens. The ship was enormous, dwarfing anything humanity had built. Its hull gleamed with alien symbols, and faint lights pulsed like a heartbeat along its sides. Mira whispered, It's like a city in the sky. Serenia stood rigid, her face pale. A Dominion warship. They came faster than I expected. The air itself seemed heavier as the vessel passed overhead, casting shadows across the colony. Some settlers fell to their knees in fear. Others clenched their fists. Elias simply stared, his jaw tight. Then, without warning, a deep voice echoed across the settlement, carried by the ship's broadcast system. It spoke in a language most could not understand, but Serenia translated softly, her voice grim. They say, "Surrender the traitor. Submit to the Dominion, or be erased." The settlers looked to Elias, waiting. He felt the weight of their lives pressing on his shoulders. For a moment he thought of Earth, of the countless battles he had already fought, of comrades lost. Then he looked at Serenia, who stood with quiet defiance. Elias raised his voice, steady and strong. "We don't surrender. Not today. Not ever." The crowd erupted, not in fear this time, but in cheers and shouts of determination. Even those who had doubted Serenia now stood taller. The message was clear. Humanity would not kneel. Above them, the warship hovered, silent but watching. It was the eye of the storm, and the storm was about to break. That night, the colony was restless. Families huddled together. Guards patrolled the walls, and the skies glowed faintly with the warship's presence. Elias sat in the command hub, maps and notes spread before him. Serenia stood across the table, pointing to possible landing zones where Dominion forces might deploy. "They will test your defenses first," she explained. "Small squads probing attacks. They want to measure your strength before committing more. Then we give them a false measure," Elias said. "Make them think we're weaker than we are, then hit them harder when they push further." Serenia's lips curved slightly, the closest thing to a smile he had seen from her. "That is human unpredictability, yes. It may work." For hours they planned, laying traps, moving resources, preparing every settler for what was to come. By dawn, exhaustion weighed on them, but there was also a spark in their eyes. Elias looked out the window at the rising suns. The warship still hung in the sky, a silent predator. But now he felt something different. Not despair, not fear, hope. And as Serenia stood beside him, watching the light spread over the colony, Elias knew this was only the beginning. The Dominion had come to crush them, but humanity was ready to fight. The Dominion warship hung above Arian 4 like a second moon. Its black surface reflected no light, and its pulsing glow painted the sky with an unnatural haze. Every settler in the colony could feel its presence, a silent weight pressing down on their chests. For 2 days it lingered, watching. On the third morning the attack came. A deep hum split the air as dropships tore through the clouds, sleek machines falling from orbit like spears of fire. They descended beyond the ridge and disappeared into the dust, leaving trails of smoke. The colony's alarms rang out, and settlers rushed to their stations. Children were hidden in shelters beneath the ground. Farmers carried rifles, and engineers clutched makeshift explosives. The colony was no longer just a home. It was a fortress. Elias Rourke stood on the command tower, binoculars pressed to his eyes. He watched the dust cloud shift and saw the first wave of Dominion soldiers emerge. They were tall, armored figures, their movements precise and mechanical. Their weapons glowed with a cold light. "They look like machines," Mira muttered beside him. "They're worse," Serenia said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were sharp. "They are bred for obedience. They will not hesitate." Elias lowered the binoculars. "Then neither will we." The first clash happened near the northern fields. The Dominion soldiers marched in tight formation, their weapons raised, expecting little resistance. But as they crossed the field, hidden charges buried in the soil detonated. Explosions ripped through the air, scattering dirt and fire. The soldiers stumbled, their formation breaking. From the ridges above, settlers opened fire. Old rifles cracked and arrows tipped with explosive heads rained down. The Dominion soldiers fired back, beams of energy slicing through rock. But the settlers kept moving, never staying in one place. Elias led one squad himself. He darted from cover to cover, signaling with hand gestures. A group of Dominion warriors advanced toward the irrigation pipes, unaware that settlers had rigged them with fuel. Elias waited until the last moment, then gave the signal. Flames erupted, engulfing the soldiers in a roaring fire. The colonists cheered, but Elias kept his voice firm. "Don't celebrate yet. They're testing us. The real strike hasn't come." For hours the battle raged in bursts, small squads of Dominion troops advancing, only to be repelled by human traps and unpredictable strikes. Serenia moved among the fighters, offering advice, pointing out weaknesses, showing them how to use chaos as a weapon. At one point, Mira's squad became cornered by a group of Dominion soldiers near the old mine. Serenia appeared suddenly, hurling a makeshift flash charge into the enemy line. The explosion of light disoriented the soldiers just long enough for Mira's team to escape and counterattack. Later, Serenia found herself standing beside Elias as they caught their breath behind a wall of sandbags. She looked at him with quiet wonder. "I did not believe it possible. You fight without symmetry, without order, and yet you win." Elias smirked despite the dust on his face. "We're not pretty fighters, but we don't stop." Her voice softened. "The Dominion cannot understand this. They will throw more at you until they learn. And when they learn, they will send everything." Elias wiped the sweat from his brow. "Then we hit them before they hit us." That night, as fires burned on the horizon, Elias called the settlement leaders into the command hub. The air was thick with smoke and fatigue. Everyone knew they had survived the first wave, but no one believed it was the end. Elias spread a rough map across the table. "We can't keep fighting like this forever. They'll overwhelm us. We need to take the fight to them." The settlers exchanged nervous glances. "You mean attack their ship?" Harlan asked, his voice disbelieving. Elias nodded. "It's risky, maybe impossible. But it's the only way. If we can sabotage that warship, cut its command, the troops on the ground lose their coordination. Without orders, they'll falter." Mira frowned. "How do we even get inside?" "That ship is built to keep everything out." Serenia's eyes gleamed. "Not everything. I know their systems. I served under them once. There are service bays, blind spots in their scanners. With the right timing, a small team could slip aboard." The room fell silent. Everyone turned to Elias. His face was grim, but his voice was steady. "Then that's what we'll do. A small team. In and out. Destroy their command systems and give this colony a chance." Harlan slammed a fist on the table. "It's suicide." Elias met his gaze without flinching. "It's survival." The next day, preparations began. Elias handpicked the team. Mira for her technical skills, 2 experienced hunters for combat, and Serenia for her knowledge of Dominion design. He would lead them himself. Before they left, Elias walked through the colony one last time. He passed families huddled in shelters, guards on the walls, children clutching handmade toys shaped like rifles. Their eyes followed him, filled with fear but also trust. They believed in him, and that weight pressed heavy on his shoulders. As night fell, Elias stood with Serenia near the waiting ground vehicle. She looked at him, her silver eyes reflecting the faint light. "You take great risk," she said quietly. "That's what humans do," Elias replied. She hesitated, then spoke with rare softness. "When I said I belonged to you, it was not only a vow of loyalty. It was hope that humanity could be different. That you could teach even me what freedom means. Do not let me be wrong." Elias met her gaze. "You're not wrong. We'll make sure of it." The team drove out into the night, engines muted, lights dimmed. Above them, the warship loomed, its faint glow painting the sky. They crossed rocky hills and dry plains until they reached the shadow of the great vessel. From here, the warship looked like a floating mountain, its hull stretching endlessly above them. Strange symbols glowed faintly and vents hissed with bursts of vapor. Serenia led them to a narrow ravine. "Here, a maintenance bay lies above. Their scanners are weak here because they never expect intruders from the ground." Using climbing gear, they scaled the rocky wall until they reached a platform built into the ship's underside. The metal hummed beneath their hands, alive with energy. Mira crouched by a control panel, tools in hand. "I can get this open. Just buy me a minute." Elias and the hunters took positions, weapons ready. Every sound seemed too loud, every breath too sharp. Finally, the panel hissed and the door slid open. A narrow corridor stretched before them, lit by cold blue light. The air smelled sterile, metallic. Elias turned to his team, his voice low but firm. "This is it. No turning back. We hit them hard, cut their heart out, and get home." The settlers nodded, faces tight with resolve. Serenia stood beside him, her eyes fierce. Together, they stepped into the warship, and the doors closed behind them. The doors of the Dominion warship closed with a metallic hiss, sealing Elias and his team inside. The air was cold, filled with the faint hum of unseen machines. The corridor stretched ahead, glowing with pale blue light. Strange glyphs marked the walls, shifting slightly as if alive. Mira whispered, her voice tight. "Feels like we stepped into the belly of a beast." Elias nodded. "Then we cut it from the inside." Serenia moved to the front, her steps confident. "Stay close." The Dominion built these ships to confuse outsiders. Corridors shift, paths close. But I know the routes. They advanced cautiously, weapons raised. Every sound echoed too loudly. The scrape of boots, the hiss of vents. Twice they ducked into shadows as Dominion patrols passed. Towering armored soldiers with glowing visors, their footsteps perfectly synchronized. The settlers held their breath, waiting until the soldiers vanished. Elias gave a small hand signal and they moved on. Back on the ground, the colony braced for survival. The Dominion warship had deployed more troops and battle raged across the fields. Settlers fought from barricades, launching improvised explosives and firing rifles until their arms ached. Children and elders remained in underground shelters, the walls trembling with each distant blast. Mira's devices jammed some of the Dominion scanners, forcing their soldiers to move slower. But still the enemy pressed closer. Harlan, the grizzled farmer who had once doubted Serenia, now stood atop a watchtower, rifle in hand, shouting encouragement as he fired into the advancing lines. The settlers knew their captain was inside the warship. They knew their only chance was to hold the line until he struck the heart of the beast. Inside the ship, the infiltration team reached a wide chamber filled with glowing conduits. Energy pulsed through crystal tubes, humming with power. "This is a secondary grid," Serenia explained. "We follow it to the core. That is where the command systems lie." As they advanced, the hunters kept watch, their weapons ready. But the deeper they went, the stranger the ship became. The walls seemed to shift when unobserved, and strange whispers echoed faintly, as though the vessel itself was alive. One hunter muttered, "This place isn't built, it's grown." Serenia's face was grim. "The Dominion uses living machines. They believe control is stronger when fused with life. Do not trust what you see." Suddenly alarms blared. Red light washed over the corridor and metallic shutters slammed down. Dominion soldiers poured in from hidden doors, weapons raised. "Ambush!" Elias shouted. The corridor erupted in fire. Beams of energy struck the walls, sending sparks flying. Elias and his team returned fire, ducking behind conduits. Mira hurled an improvised grenade, the explosion scattering the soldiers. But more kept coming. Serenia grabbed Elias's arm. "This way!" She slammed her hand against a panel and a hidden passage opened. The team rushed through, sealing it behind them. Their breathing was heavy, their hearts pounding. Elias glanced at Serenia. "How long before they close in again?" "Not long," she answered. "We must move faster." Meanwhile, the battle on the ground grew fiercer. Dominion walkers, towering machines with 4 legs and mounted cannons, marched toward the colony. Settlers scrambled, hurling firebombs and detonating charges to slow them down. Mira's jammers flickered, strained by interference from the warship above. Still, the settlers fought with every scrap they had. Defiance burned brighter than fear. At one barricade, a group of young settlers faced a squad of Dominion soldiers. They had no heavy weapons, only farming tools and rifles. Yet when the soldiers advanced, the settlers roared together and charged, overwhelming the enemy through sheer will. Serenia's words echoed in their minds. The Dominion cannot imagine chaos as a weapon, and so chaos became their shield. Inside the warship, Elias and his team reached the central core chamber. It was vast, a cathedral of alien machinery. A towering crystalline structure pulsed at the center, each beat echoing like a heartbeat. Energy arced across conduits, lighting the chamber in eerie blue. "This is it," Serenia said. "The control nexus. Destroy this and the ship's systems collapse. The ground forces will falter." Mira rushed to the nearest console, her hands working quickly. "I'll overload the circuits, but I need time." The hunters took positions at the entrances, ready for another wave. Elias stood beside Serenia, his grip tight on his rifle. "How long?" Mira gritted her teeth. 5 minutes, Elias exhaled. "We'll buy you 5. The Dominion soldiers arrived in force. Dozens stormed the chamber, their weapons blazing. The hunters fired, dropping the first wave, but more replaced them instantly. The room became a storm of energy and fire. Elias fought like the soldier he once was, moving between cover, firing with precision. Yet even as he fought, he knew they were outnumbered. Then he heard Mira shout, "Almost there." At that moment, a blast struck their cover. Elias was thrown to the floor, his weapon skidding away. A Dominion soldier advanced, weapon raised. But before the shot came, Serenia leaped between them. Energy struck her side, searing through her armor. She collapsed, her face pale but her eyes fierce. "No," Elias shouted, pulling her close. Her voice was weak but steady. "I told you. Tonight I belong to you. My life is yours to spend." He shook his head, fury burning in his chest. "Not like this," she smiled faintly. "Like this. Freedom has a cost. Let me pay it." With the last of her strength, Serenia pressed her hand against the core's control node. Her alien blood activated hidden circuits, forcing them to overload faster. Light flared across the chamber. The Dominion soldiers faltered, confused. Elias roared in defiance, snatching his weapon and firing with renewed fury. The hunters joined him, holding the line. Mira screamed, "It's done! Get out!" But Serenia's hand remained on the node, her body glowing with the energy coursing through her. She looked at Elias one final time. "Remember me, not as their weapon, but as your ally." And then the core erupted. The explosion tore through the chamber, ripping conduits apart. Shockwaves shook the warship, alarms blaring as systems collapsed. Dominion soldiers screamed in confusion as their armor failed. The living ship groaned, its heartbeat stuttering. Elias and his team were thrown back but shielded by debris. Serenia was gone, her body consumed in the light. Through the smoke, Elias pulled Mira and the hunters to their feet. "We move now!" They raced through collapsing corridors, fire and smoke chasing them. At last they reached an emergency bay. Mira slammed a control and a small shuttle detached. The team leapt aboard and the shuttle blasted out into the night sky just as the warship shuddered violently. From the colony below, settlers cheered as the great vessel began to fall. Flames erupted across its hull, and with a final groan it broke apart, scattering burning debris across the barren land. The Dominion soldiers on the ground froze, their command gone. Confusion spread and the settlers seized the moment. With a final push, they drove the enemy back, forcing survivors to retreat toward the wreckage. The warship was no more. The Dominion had been defeated. When the smoke cleared, Elias stood before the settlers, his body battered but his spirit unbroken. The people gathered, their faces lit by firelight. They looked at him not only as their captain, but as proof that humanity had stood against an empire and survived. Elias raised his voice so all could hear. "We lost much today. We lost friends and we lost an ally who gave her life for us. But we did not kneel. We did not break. We are human, and we are free." The settlers erupted in cheers, their voices echoing across the night. For the first time since the warship arrived, hope filled the air. Later, when the fires died and silence returned, Elias stood alone on the ridge. He looked at the stars where Serenia had come from, his chest heavy with memory. "Tonight you belong to us," he whispered softly, "and because of you, we belong to ourselves." The wind carried his words into the endless night. Above, the stars shone brighter than ever, as if the universe itself was listening. Humanity had been tested, and humanity had answered.